Hi, I'm Kelly Monaco. I'm currently unemployed, so I created this channel to earn some extra income. I'll be updating you with the latest news about the Drama General Hospital.
Hello and welcome back. The story of Brooklyn's hardships is truly driving Chase to take action to protect his wife. What began as a quiet fracture inside a marriage quickly spirals into a storm that threatens to consume everything Harrison Chase has ever stood for. Because the moment he learns the truth about Brooklyn is not a moment of simple anger, but a violent, emotional rupture that tears through his sense of justice, loyalty, and identity all at once, leaving him standing at the crossroads between the man he has always been and the man he is about to become. The revelation does not arrive gently. It crashes into him with the weight of everything he has sacrificed to rebuild his career, everything he has endured to regain respect within the PCPD, and everything he believes about right and wrong. Brooklyn's trembling confession, fragmented and desperate, forces him to see not just the accident itself, but the chain of fear, denial, and panic that followed it. And in that moment, the law becomes something abstract, something distant, something that cannot compete with the very real, very immediate fear of losing her. Chase's initial reaction is explosive, not because he does not love Brooklyn, but because he does, and that love makes the betrayal feel sharper, more dangerous, more suffocating. He cannot reconcile the image of the woman he married with the reality of what she has done. And yet, even as anger surges through him, it is already being overtaken by something stronger, something more dangerous, a desperate instinct to protect, to shield, to take control of a situation that is already slipping beyond either of them. He knows exactly what this means for her if the truth comes out, the criminal charges, the public disgrace, the destruction of any chance they have at building a future together, and perhaps most devastating of all, the permanent loss of the life they were trying to create through adoption, a dream that suddenly feels fragile and on the verge of shattering. The weight of that realization transforms him. The rules he has lived by begin to blur, not all at once, but in slow, deliberate fractures, each one justified by the belief that this is temporary, that this is necessary, that this is the only way to protect something worth more than his badge. What begins as a plan to manage the situation quickly mutates into something far more extreme, far more irreversible. Chase does not just consider covering for Brooklyn, he commits to it fully, crossing a line he once believed he would never approach. In a decision that feels both calculated and completely reckless, he steps forward and claims responsibility for the accident himself, crafting a version of events that shifts the blame onto his own shoulders, turning himself into the shield that stands between Brooklyn and the consequences of her actions. That confession detonates like a bomb within the PCPD. The disbelief is immediate and overwhelming, because Chase is not the kind of officer who makes mistakes like this, not the kind of man who loses control, not the kind of person who hides the truth. His admission does not just raise questions. It fractures trust, destabilizes assumptions, and sends ripples of suspicion through every corner of the department. When he is taken into custody, the image is almost unbearable. A man who has spent his life enforcing the law, now reduced to standing on the other side of it, stripped of authority, stripped of certainty, but still clinging to the one thing he refuses to surrender, his decision. For Brooklyn, the consequences are psychological before they are legal. Watching Chase destroy himself to protect her does not bring relief. It deepens her guilt into something unbearable, something that grows heavier with every passing moment. The lie that was meant to save her becomes a prison of its own, trapping her in a cycle of fear and self-reproach that begins to erode her sense of self. She cannot escape The knowledge that every step Chase takes deeper into this nightmare is a step taken because of her, because of a choice she made in a moment of weakness and panic. The distance between them grows even as he sacrifices everything for her, because the truth sits between them like an unspoken accusation, impossible to ignore, impossible to resolve. Curtis cannot accept the story as it stands. His instincts tell him something is wrong, not just with the facts, but with the emotional undercurrent beneath them. Chase's confession does not feel like truth, it feels like protection, like a constructed narrative designed to conceal something far more complicated. The memory of the accident, the chaos, the split-second decisions that led to Jordan's condition, all of it refuses to align with the version Chase is presenting. That doubt becomes the starting point for a deeper investigation, one that is not driven by suspicion alone, but by a need to understand how everything could have unraveled so completely. Laura, standing at the intersection of law, morality, and personal loyalty, senses the same fracture in the story. She recognizes the pattern, the way people in Port Charles often sacrifice themselves to protect those they love, and she understands the cost of that kind of decision better than most. But understanding does not mean accepting. If Chase is lying, then the truth is still out there, buried beneath fear and desperation, and finding it becomes essential not just for justice, but for preventing a greater collapse that could take down more than just one man's career. As Curtis and Laura begin to pull at the threads, the carefully constructed illusion starts to unravel. Small inconsistencies grow into larger questions, and the pressure begins to mount on all sides. The truth, once buried, starts to push its way back to the surface, threatening to expose everything Chase has tried to protect. And at the center of it all, Brooklyn faces a choice that will define not just her future, but the meaning of everything Chase has sacrificed. Remaining silent means allowing him to fall, to carry a burden that was never his to bear. Speaking the truth means destroying the fragile shield he has built, forcing both of them to confront the full consequences of what happened that night. The situation becomes a psychological battlefield where every decision carries irreversible consequences, where love is no longer a source of comfort, but a force that drives people to make choices they cannot undo. Chase's willingness to confess is not just an act of devotion. It is a transformation, a moment where he redefines himself in the most dangerous way possible, choosing sacrifice over integrity, emotion over law, and in doing so, setting into motion a chain of events that may leave none of them untouched. What began as a single accident has evolved into something far more complex, a web of lies, loyalty, guilt, and unraveling identities. The question is no longer who caused the crash, but how far each of them is willing to go to protect the people they love, and whether any of them will still recognize themselves when the truth finally comes to light. Brooklyn should be celebrating. After everything she and Chase have fought for, the possibility of bringing Phoebe into their lives ought to feel like the first real sign that their future is finally taking shape. Instead, that hope turns poisonous the moment Chase places himself in danger for her. The closer Brooklyn gets to the life she has dreamed of, the more unbearable it becomes to watch the man she loves destroy himself in order to protect her. What should have been a victory starts to feel like a curse, because every step forward with Phoebe now seems tied to Chase sinking deeper into legal and emotional ruin. Chase's decision changes everything. He does not simply stand by Brooklyn. He throws himself into the fire for her, ready to confess, ready to carry the blame, ready to let the world believe he is the one responsible for Jordan's accident. That choice is reckless, desperate, and deeply in character, because Chase has always loved with the kind of loyalty that becomes dangerous when fear takes over. He sees Brooklyn trembling on the edge of losing everything, and instead of asking what the truth demands, he asks what sacrifice will save her. The answer he chooses could cost him his badge, his freedom, and the life he was trying to build. But Brooke Lynn cannot live with that sacrifice for long. The shock of seeing Chase in real danger begins to break her. She can endure fear for herself, but not the sight of him being arrested, questioned, and dragged into a nightmare that should have been hers to face. Her guilt grows sharper with every hour, turning her silence into its own kind of prison. Phoebe, once a symbol of hope, becomes a painful reminder that no future can feel clean if it is built on a lie this devastating. That is where Tracy steps in. Tracy may be harsh, controlling, and impossible to ignore, but she knows when something is wrong, and this situation reeks of desperation rather than truth. She refuses to believe Chase's confession at face value. To Tracy, the story is too neat, too convenient, too drenched in the kind of emotional self-destruction that people mistake for nobility. She does not just want to save Chase, she wants to rip apart the lie before it buries the whole family in scandal. Her interference only makes the situation messier. The more Tracy pushes, the more she uncovers a swamp of secrets, panic, and emotional damage. Curtis cannot believe Chase is truly the man behind this madness, and Laura begins to sense the same crack in the official story. Together, they start circling the truth, following the inconsistencies, the silences, and the raw panic that Brooke Lynn can no longer hide. What they find is not just a simple cover-up, but a chain of bad decisions driven by love, fear, and the terror of losing everything. In the end, the real crisis is not only the accident. It is the fact that Brooke Lynn and Chase are now trapped in a story where love keeps pushing them toward ruin instead of saving them from it. Tracy may be the one trying to pull Chase out, but the deeper she digs, the more dangerous the fallout becomes. And if Brooke Lynn finally breaks and tells the truth, it may save Chase from prison while destroying the fragile future they were both trying so hard to protect.
I'll be back at the General Hospital soon. We'll see each other again soon. Thank you for supporting my channel. Goodbye and see you again.